Hi there, welcome to Camping Secrets. I'm Marcy Marc. Another day comes and another power pack comes out and I'm here to review it for you. You may have seen my recent review of the Bluetti Elite 200 V2 power station. I called it probably the best power station on the market for camping purposes. Check out the review up here. Bluetti, never a company to sit on their laurels, have decided to come out with a smaller version of that one. This is the Elite 100 V2. And basically, it's got very similar specifications to the Bluetti AC 180, but in a much smaller pack. This is a much smaller package. It's 1.8 kilowatts of output power. It has power lifting mode. It's got 1,024 watt hours of capacity, just slightly less than the AC 180. It's non-expandable, so really this is what you get. But what I love about it is because it uses the automotive-grade lithium iron phosphate batteries, they are much more efficient and can be packed down into a tiny size. So the dimensions of this are great for small camper vans, going away for a weekend. I think 1,024 watt hours, you may be pushing it to run a cool box for that whole weekend with this, and it's not expandable. I don't really mind about the expandability, but you may want to go for the bigger Elite 200 V2, as mentioned, if you want that extra capacity and extra output power. But there are a few little innovations with this Elite 100 that aren't present on the Elite 200 or the AC 180. One of the main ones is the USB-C port down here. So you've got two USB-C ports. Now it's pretty standard these days to get 100 watt USB-Cs. This has a 100 watt, but it also has a 140 watt USB-C output. So that's the first power pack that I've seen with that innovation. There's two USB-As, but curiously, those USB-As are just standard USB-As, 15 watt per port. And I don't quite understand why Bluetti didn't go for slightly higher power USB-As, you know, an 18 watt, for example, fast charge. In terms of AC outputs, we've got two AC outputs, and you'll notice one sort of upside down, so your cable can come down, and then the other one's the normal way up, and the cable can come up. So that's nice, you don't get interfering cables like that. On the top of the device, there's no wireless charging. So it does feel like Bluetti is moving away from the wireless charging, which is a shame because I quite liked just being able to plop my phone on the top and get it to charge. In terms of outputs, we've got 12 volt cigarette lighter output, and we've got two regulated DC 5521 socket outputs if you want to run some electronics or, you know, some gadgets that require that kind of adapter. The display is standard Bluetti display with, you know, total battery capacity, remaining time for charge or discharge, as well as input and output powers. That's all pretty standard. The weight is reasonable. It's not super light. It's 11.5 kilograms, which is a lot lighter than the AC 180. So it's lighter and smaller than the AC 180. And as such, you know, I've got to say it's probably a more useful power station for me versus the AC 180, which was already a fantastic power station. Now, evolution of power stations is incremental. It's not as if we're getting like game-changing changes, but I think the slow evolution towards smaller, more compact, but with lots of power and battery capacity in a tiny package with a reasonable weight is progress. So definitely worth having a look at the Elite 100 V2. So we're gonna put it through some tests, see how the efficiency is. The AC efficiency of the Bluetti 200 Elite V2 was incredible. It was about 95%. So we want to see, is this just as efficient? Has it got that top quality specification? And is it deserving of the Elite branding? Let's dig into this. First off, I thought it would just be good to do a direct visual comparison against the Elite 200, which I reviewed recently and really liked. For me, this is probably the best power pack on the market at the moment. It really offers a great blend of output power, 2.6 kilowatts, and capacity, just over 2 kilowatt hours. So for me, this will last a weekend of camping with no problem. Obviously, it's more expensive and it's bigger than the Elite 100. So 2.6 kilowatts, and this is 1.8 kilowatts. So, it is less power, but 1.8 kilowatts is pretty good for a weekend. And, the AC 180 is 1.8 kilowatts as well. 1.8 kilowatts for camping is pretty good. You can run a hairdryer, you can run a kettle. So this will power most things. It does have the power lifting mode, and that's really useful because it means you can power any resistive load like a kettle, like a hairdryer, even if it's rated higher than what this can actually give. So this would then convert the voltage and enable you to power it without tripping out. So you can power most things with this, although only at 1.8 kilowatts of total output power. In terms of size, this is obviously smaller, but it's not half the size. It's probably more like 3/4 of the size, but only half the capacity. But even so, I think this is a really nice form factor, and it'll tuck away much easier than the Elite 200. So the dimensions of this is 32 centimeters across by 21.5 depth by 25 height. So really small. As I said, the weight is not that bad, 11.5 kilograms, whereas the Elite 200 is a lot heavier. So you may want to bear that in mind. But I find when you go in a car or camper van, it doesn't take much effort to get this loaded in. But obviously, if you want to go for picnics and stuff, once you're at a campsite and you want to carry this with you, then things get a little more challenging. And then you may want to look at something that goes in a rucksack like the Bluetti hands-free, which I also reviewed recently. Warranty, Bluetti are exceptional with warranties, although most other suppliers have also matched them now at 5 years of warranty. So any problems with this, Bluetti will sort it out. I've got to say, with all the power packs I've owned from EcoFlow, from Jackery, from Bluetti, from All Powers, I've never had any problems, and I've had a lot of power packs, tested them. But people do report in the comments that they have problems. But I've got to say, Bluetti seem pretty reliable. I'm not seeing a lot of problems compared with some of the other brands. So, I think you can buy with confidence from Bluetti. Please check out the links in the description below if you're interested in either of these as I go on and talk. That'll show you the latest price. I'm not going to talk about price in this video because it does change, and the Elite 100 is coming out very well, it's basically only just come out. So often Bluetti give like an introductory price, and I think if you check the price now, you may get a good deal, because then the price does tend to go up at a later date, as it has done for the 200. We've got excellent UPS functionality on the Elite 100. So it's a 10 millisecond switch time. So what that means is you can have this connected to the mains, and then it can be powering important equipment that you don't want to turn off in the event of a power cut to your house or whatever. So 10 millisecond switch time means that if the power does go out, it will switch on to battery power very quickly, and your computer will stay on, your TV will stay on, your CPAP machine will stay on. Whatever you need is likely to carry on working due to that after that power cut. You can also connect solar panels to this, up to 1000 watts of solar, and the combined input power for this is 1.2 kilowatts. So that could be all from the mains on turbo charging, or it could be as a combination of mains and photovoltaic solar cells. And you can configure this really nicely on the app. We'll show you that in a little bit, the app means you can change the emphasis of how this charges, so you can sort of set it up to concentrate on solar input versus mains, and you can change that ratio, and that's nice. And you can also, one great feature of the 200, which is replicated in the 100, you can set it up so that if this is in a remote building or something and it goes flat, you can have it so that if the sun comes out and starts charging it via the solar, you can have it so that it then turns back on and it remembers the state that it was in before it went flat. So that's really cool if you can't get to your log cabin, or say this is running a fridge in a log cabin and you're not there and there's no way of Wi-Fiing in or anything like that. You can have it so that this will turn back on once the solar charging starts. So that's nice, and then it will start powering your fridge without you having to intervene. So that's a nice software touch there from Bluetti. So I think it's time to give this a few tests. We're at 100% charge. So I'm going to do a discharge test, taking this from 100 down to 0, and then measure how much capacity has this really got. It says it's got 1,024 watt hours. So let's see if it does. So I'm going to do my standard efficiency test, which is to run this heater from the Elite 100 and measure how much power is extracted from the inverter on this by the heater. So obviously this is about 1,024 watt hours of capacity. This runs at about 1.2 kilowatts. So you would expect this to run just under an hour, maybe 50 minutes. So let's just plug this in. Activate the AC, turn on the output. I think you have to hold that down. That's on. We're ready to roll, so let's get this going. There we go, 1,095 watts. So we're well under the maximum output of this, which is 1.8 kilowatts, and this is drawing about 1.1 kilowatts. So as I say, this will run about 50 minutes and then we'll measure exactly how much power was extracted. Then we can work out what the efficiency of the Elite 100 is. You can see down here the screen now, so it's a good opportunity to look. Drawing 1,067 watts. Got nothing going in, of course, and it's saying just under an hour time remaining, 0.8 hours now. And then we've got my power meter here, which is recording the actual power. So that's 1,070 watts. And if we go on here, we can look at the kilowatt hours that are being drawn out. Also a good opportunity to look at the Bluetti app. So I've got all my Bluetti devices here on the app. We can log on to the Elite 100. I'm using Bluetooth, so we can connect. And then we can look at this as we're recording. So you can see we're drawing about a kilowatt of power. It's actually more like 1.06 kilowatts, but the app doesn't display two significant figures. Down to 96%. I'm not going to do any changes, but you can see the app shows 47 minutes remaining time. AC is activated. If I go into settings, we got a nice array of stuff. You can add Wi-Fi, so you can remotely log into this device via your Wi-Fi network, which is great. I've got it on turbocharging mode, but you can actually put it on a silent mode, which doesn't involve the fans at all, which is great. It is a very quiet unit. On silent mode, the max input power is 600 watts, but with turbo, it's 1.2 kilowatts, so it charges much faster. You can activate power lifting mode here, eco. You can what eco does is just turns off the power pack if there's been nothing drawn for 10 minutes or so. I tend to leave that off. You can set the screen timeout. I have it never turning off when I'm doing the video. And you can upgrade all the firmware and Internet of Things, etc. on this menu. Mine's all up to date. So the app is pretty good now. It's well developed. Does allow you to do this self-recovery. I've got it disabled at the moment, but you can enable that. That's what I was talking about. If you want it to re-switch on the power supply after it's been drained and then comes back to life, it can turn itself back on if you want it to. Let's get back to the test. Very quiet operation, cannot hear any fans. So we're getting to the end now, still powering this. It's been going for about 50 minutes at over a kilowatt of output power. You can see we have a little alarm flashing now, battery low. And we're down to 2%, now 1%. And we've extracted 890 watt hours so far out of the 1024 indicated. So we'll see if we get to that 900. $910. That's probably about it. And we're done. So that was an interesting test, and pretty much the Elite 100 acted like I thought it would. It powered this heater for about 50 minutes, and my power meter recorded 910 watt hours of power extracted. Now the nameplate capacity of this is 1024, so we can easily work out the efficiency of the of the power station itself by just dividing 910 by 1024 and times it by 100, and that is about 89% efficient. Now that's pretty good. The Elite 200, I did measure over 90%. I measured about 95% efficient. So this is around 89, 90%, not quite as good as the 200, but still anything over 85% is excellent. And so this is still a really, really capable device in terms of efficiency. Right, let's get this thing charged up now, and we're gonna do a bit of solar power. Let's do it. One thing that's worth mentioning with the Elite 100 is that Bluetti don't give you that many cables in the box. You get a standard mains kettle plug for charging from the mains. That's fairly typical. And then there's only one other cable. It's the solar DC input cable. You don't get a car cable for charging via your car cigarette lighter. And that's a bit of a shame. You can buy that from the Bluetti website separately, but they no longer give it in the box, which is a shame, I think, because it's quite useful to have that cable. And you know, it's about 20 quid, but it's an extra 20 quid that you'd rather not pay. In terms of solar, I've got the Bluetti PV200 here. That's the 200 watt solar panel with sort of 4 separate bits that can fold together. Has legs, adjustable legs to adjust the tilt. Really, really good photovoltaic solar panel, portable, and I'll be doing a separate review on that soon. But this has standard MC4 outputs, and we're going to use this cable that comes with the Elite to charge it up. So we can just simply connect these up. And it's not the sunniest day, there's no direct sunlight. I don't think we'll be getting much solar electricity, unfortunately. So this plugs into the front here. Now you can use any solar array as long as you've got the right converter cables. MC4 is good, but you can use intermediate conversion cables if you want to get it into this XT60 connector type. The voltage of the array needs to be between 12 volt and 60 volt. So if you've got a really big array in series or something that's higher voltage than that, you've got to do something, maybe go parallel to get it down to below 60 volts and into here. And there's also a power limitation. This will only take a kilowatt of solar input DC voltage or power. So we can just connect up the XT60 The display is still on. Let's see if we get some light power. Little click there. And we got a little bit, but it's a tiny amount. About 20 watts. You know, and it's a fairly bright day here in the UK, but 20 watts from a 200 watt panel is pretty pathetic. And you know, this is my main gripe about solar power in the UK, because when there's clouds overhead, you're lucky to get 10% of the maximum. You really need direct sunlight, and that's, you know, we have had a lot of that in the last month or so in the UK, but on the one day that I want to test the solar, we're not getting anything. But it shows that you can use a solar panel with the Elite 100, and it does work. But hallelujah, the next day the sun is out and we are getting some serious sunlight onto the solar panel. So look down here now, we're up at 164 watts in beautiful British sunshine. This thing delivers, this gets charged, everyone's a winner. So we're down at 0% now. We need to measure the 0 to 100% charge time. I've used the smartphone app to put this into turbo mode. You can do it on the front panel by pressing a combination of buttons, but it's easier on the app. And turbo mode allows up to 1.2 kilowatts of power from the mains, 240 volts, into the Elite 100 to charge it in around 0 to 80% in around 45 minutes. We're gonna test that out. I've got a stopwatch here. I'm literally gonna switch on the mains and then measure how long it takes to charge up to 80% and then up to the full 100% in turbo mode. We'll also have a listen to the fan noise, because that's often a bit of an irritation when there's a lot of power going in. But you'll see that this is a fairly quiet device. Right, let's do it. There we go. So we're on. Let's start the stopwatch. 552 watts. So what normally happens is that the power stations will use a lowish power to start with, and then as the capacity rises, the charge capacity, then the input power ramps. And that's to help protect the lithium iron phosphate batteries from premature degradation. So they recommend not to use turbo mode unless you really need it. If you're in a rush, then use it, but most of the time, if you're, say, charging overnight, then don't use the turbo mode. At the moment, it's saying around 2 hours expected for full charge, but that's at the 600 watts. If it's double that, you'd expect around an hour if the power is at 1.2 kilowatts. Right, we'll monitor the situation and see how long it takes. Now up to the full 1200 watts of input power. And you can see the expected charge time now is under an hour for full up to 100%. So I think we're on course really for the prediction of 45 minutes for 80%. %, bang on 45 minutes. Brilliant. %, 1 hour and 3 minutes. So fairly good charge times. You could see that the Elite 100 went from 0% up to 80% in about 45 minutes exactly, which is a really respectable time for a fairly small power pack with 1.2 kilowatts of input power. Then if I let that run up to 100%, it took about a further 18 minutes, so 1 hour and 3 minutes in total for a full 0% to 100% charge in turbo mode. Now bear in mind, if you don't want to use turbo mode just to extend the lifetime of the batteries, you can run in lower input power modes. 600 watts, for example, will take double the time. So instead of 1 hour 3, it'll probably be about 2 hours. Anyway, respectable performance. So what do I make of the Bluetti Elite 100 V2? Well, I'm, slightly perplexed by Bluetti's release schedule and the number of power stations that they keep releasing. I know that technology improves at a gradual rate, and as new technology comes online, they want to put it into a new power station. But the result of that is that you've got so many products in their range that it's very, very difficult to know which one to go for. I mean, the best rule of thumb I can say is that the later the power station in terms of release, the better. But then you've got the price issue, because often the newest power stations are the most expensive, and you can often pick up older ones like the AC180 a lot cheaper. So it's given me an idea for a future video to look at the specifications of all these power stations and compare it with the price, the current price, the snapshot, and then see which are the best value. But that's another video for another time. In terms of the Elite 100 V2, it is a very good power pack. As I've said before, the tiny dimensions, fairly low weight, 11.5 kilograms, great efficiency, 90%, fast charge time, up to 80% in about 45 minutes. The 140 watt USB-C, 2 AC outputs. It does pretty much what you would want for a power station this size. I do like that efficiency. I do like the 10 millisecond UPS functionality, uninterruptible power supply. It's not an expandable power pack. So this is a power pack that you've got to know exactly what it's going to be doing and whether it fulfills your needs. For me, I don't review these things for, prepping or survival or power cuts, really. I review them in terms of going camping in a camper van, having this as your power station for your gadgets and your toaster and your hairdryer and your kettle and your cool box. It's for camping, and really I'm looking for something that lasts a few nights. That's my thing. It may not be your thing. For that, this works well. I would just say the capacity is at the lower end of what I think is usable for a weekend's camping. It's 1,024 watt hours, non-expandable. So really, you've got to be able to use solar to get it charged up when you're camping. And as you saw, in the UK, if it's cloudy, you're not going to get enough solar power. However good the power station is, and however good your solar panel is, you need the sun. So for me in the UK, I would probably recommend to go for the slightly larger Bluetti Elite 200 V2. Yes, it's more expensive. Yes, it's bigger, but it's a phenomenal power station because it will give you that weekend's power and enough spare to get through that time. I don't think this is quite enough, but if you're going away for one night, then this is fine. So just think about or using solar or car charging. So I do think you just need to have that other option of being able to charge this up, and in that case, then it's great. Of course, you can charge it and use it at the same time. It's got power lifting mode as well, which means it will power anything resistive. So, up to, a 3 kilowatt kettle will run on this, but only at 1.8 kilowatts, which is its output power. I think 1.8 kilowatts is plenty. This does the job. I ran the heater for 50 minutes and the fans didn't even come on. This is really quiet. It charges quiet. I do like it. It's a fantastic bit of kit. So I would just recommend check the latest prices. Use the links in the description below. See if it's on offer. If it is and the price to power and capacity ratio looks good, then I would say go for it. You're not going to go wrong with this. It's just whether it's the best value at the time. Anyway, I hope that has been of some use. Bluetti are making some great power stations. There are a lot of them. It does get confusing. I hope I've tried to explain it a little and make it a bit more understandable. Thanks for watching. Please check out our future videos. Please subscribe to the channel. I've been Marcy Marc and this has been Camping Secrets. Bye for now.